What's up, listeners? Today's episode, Below the Hotline, our new show where you can call in with any questions you've got, 424-272-6640. The number's in the show notes. You can call in with any question you have. Today's episode is brought to you by Magic Mind, the most amazing thing to kick off any day. Magic Mind is a 2-ounce shot with matcha, nootropics, adaptogens, mushrooms. It's basically the 21st century morning ritual drink and the answer to coffee, which we've been drinking for 400 years and we're all underserved by. So go check it out, magicmind.co. It's something that I've built over, well, it started 7 years ago with going to the ER from drinking too much coffee. But you can find out more of the story on magicmind.co. Use promo code BTL for Below the Line for 20% off. All right, let's get into it with today's voicemail.
Hey, James. This is Nick from California. You actually answered one of my questions a couple of weeks ago, so I thought I'd try my luck and call in again because really need some advice right now. So I've got my own.
Nick from Cali. Live in LA and lived up and down the Cali coast. Great state. And I don't remember the question, but I remember you did call before. So thank you for calling in again. And I think I'm going to dig this question. If I listen to the first minute and kind of know where it's going about an hour ago, I think I'm going to dig this question because it's a question on a lot of people's minds.
Business, and I'm really at the point where I think I should be going head into it full time and leave my other career. But every time I think about it, a lot of doubt starts creeping in, and honestly, I'm a little scared. So how do you deal, as someone who's founded multiple companies, how do you deal with that fear of failure when I'm about to dive headfirst in? I kind of think it's the only thing holding me back at this point, but I'm seeing all the things that could go wrong. So any advice would help, and hope this gets heard on air. Thanks, James. I've really been loving the growth of the show, and I've been loving watching you on YouTube. So thanks.
All right. Let's see. Nick. Fear. That is the question. I don't want to get too abstract to begin this, but the common thread between philosophy, therapy, religion is how to avoid self-sabotage. Someone smart told me that once. How to avoid self-sabotage. That's why we're interested in those things. That's why we go to therapy or study philosophy or try to upgrade our mental models on how to view the world. And when are we most prone to self-sabotage? It's when we are in fear. So in many ways, it's all about this topic of fear. Within the entrepreneurial route, the other reason for this, pregnant pause is because it's just, there's so much fear involved in it. I mean, anyone can get excited about something for 90 days, but day 91 comes around, month 17 comes around, and it's just, that initial enthusiasm or the contrast to that shitty job you had, and that wears off by day 91 for many people, and then it's just the reality of, oh shit, I have to grow a business, and in many ways psychologically it feels like it is, I guess in terms of making a living, it really does feel life or death, and that's the heaviest part. That is the heaviest part of starting something. Within that abstract realm, I love this quote from a guy I love reading, Ram Dass, who says, "The great way is easy for the one who has no preferences. The great way is easy for the one who has no preferences." And I swear I'll get off of the abstract side of things to get into tactical for you, but the great way, the great challenge, the great path, the path to greatness is easy for the one that has no preferences. For the one that can find the good in any result. And I think this gets to how can you get off of this fork in the road of success and failure and get on to a single path that is going to take you to providence no matter what. Providence no matter what, meaning, is your ego tied to some result with your business, or is your ego tied to learning as much as possible? Socrates once said that he told a guy was asking him whether he should get married or not, and Socrates, this could be apocryphal, but Socrates said you should get married because either you get married and you're happy and you have a happy life because you got married, or you get married and your wife makes you unhappy, you'll become a philosopher. And that's interesting because he basically is saying you could win in either way, either scenario. I think it's the same with starting a startup. So the tactical answer I would give you, Nick, is to make the leap and start your company. Just head on, go into the unknown, because either the company will do well and you'll be happy, or there will be struggles, and I don't know if you'll want to become a philosopher, but you certainly will learn so much more. I mean, an MBA is essentially at the fingertips of anyone that wants really 10 times that education of a 2-year degree, graduate degree. Is by starting your own business, you will have the learnings that are going to inform so many facets of your life. You start a business and it fails. I built a business for 5.5 years that failed. And 5.5 years, I look back and say that was a 25-year career in 5 years. And it's led to every insight I've had since then. It has allowed me to invest in startups, build further startups, inform me in the businesses that I built within Airbnb, and it's informed me with really a shifted perspective on life. And it really informed me how not to orient your ego. I oriented my ego on accomplishment. And I since learned if it's oriented on learning, then you cannot lose. If you have no preferences of what happens in those outcomes, the business is either successful or you have a 10-year career condensed into a 1.5 years on something that does not pan out. If you are comfortable with both of those scenarios, it's George Bernard Shaw, the brilliant thinker, would say that he can get comfortable in any scenario in life as long as he can think through the worst case scenario and get comfortable with that. If the worst case scenario is you spend all your savings, you spend some of your family and friends' money, you spend $150,000 a 1.5 years into your idea and it does not pan out. Well, one, that's a 1.5 years. That's less time than an MBA. $150K, that's less than an MBA. And you're probably going to learn 10 times more than an MBA. Worst case scenario, you have a better education in less time for a cheaper amount of money than going to get an MBA at, you said you're in California, so, UCLA. I swear to you, that's the worst case scenario. You'll also learn a lot about yourself. You're going to learn so much about life, business, and yourself by doing that. And that's the worst case scenario. Best case, you build something you're really happy with, proud of, and 8 months in, 18 months in, you look back and you say, shit, I'm so glad that I took both feet off the ledge and went after this. So that fear is, that is what it's all about. And not in a positive sense. It's what we think is this potential at every turn that something goes wrong. I know the prison that I have often lived in is, what will people think? And that question of what will people think if it doesn't achieve some result, if it doesn't go the way that I want it to go. And that prison is it's a prison in my own mind. And it's the wrong question. The question is more like, what will you think if you don't take this chance? 10 years from now, 20 years from now, 50 years from now. I don't know your individual situation in life, but it sounds like you've done enough thinking to know it's a coin toss of whether you do it or not. And if it's that realistic that you're really entertaining thinking about this and fearing that it could go south, then it sounds like you have a lot of good reasons to go and do it. And that fear, I think, can evaporate when you can think through the worst case scenario and get comfortable with that. Maybe even find the good in that. And when you do that, not only does the fear evaporate, but a lot of the psychological constraints that we have start to ease up because we start to let go of this immensely specific preference that we have on how everything should turn out. And when you start to let go of that, and you start to become a little bit more flexible in knowing that, hey, there's a whole range of potential results that are still net positive, even including the worst case scenario. And when you feel like there's this whole range, then it allows you to really incorporate information better. It allows you to approach each interaction with people with more flexibility, with less rigidity of needing X out of this person, needing Y out of this scenario. And that letting go is freedom. And in many ways, it's freedom from you and I sabotaging our own potential because we have this false constraint, this limiting grip on a very narrow set of outcomes because our ego is oriented around achievement or some milestone in our mind instead of an ego oriented around learning, which opens up really 360 degrees of potential outcomes that are still net positive. So, Nick, I hope that is helpful for you. And like Socrates said, I'd say go ahead and do it. Either you'll be happy with it going the way you want it to, or you'll become a little bit wiser. So with that, it's today's episode of Below the Hotline. Feel free to call in with your own question on the number in the show notes.